Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Chulas Pero Mulas. Thank you so much for tuning in for this episode. This episode is kind of an interesting one because, first, it's been a while since I recorded. I'm not really sure what happened. I think I just kind of lost my mojo there for a minute because I think it started becoming difficult for me to to express myself the way I really want to express myself, and so I really had to take put some thought into it and figure out what episode I wanted to record next that brings some information that becomes an informative episode rather than just kind of like a ranting kind of episode. So, anyways, the topic I chose for today's episode is I think it's a topic that a lot of us Mexican Americans are going to relate because just based on the conversations that I've had throughout life with a lot of people that eventually became my friends, coworkers, and just people that have come into my life. This phrase of ni de aquí ni de allá, it's significant and it has um different it means different things for different people. But I think in the end, I think we can all agree that it's just kind of, if we are Mexican Americans and if we come from immigrant parents, first generation immigrant parents, or if we ourselves are immigrants, then we can this phrase kind of resonates a lot more with us, I think, because I believe it's something that just kind of happens to us that kind of distorts, like our perception of just kind of walking through the world. So I wanted to share my experience because I thought it would be helpful, it would be beneficial, and I just I just thought it would be a good topic. So when you pull up ni de aquí ni de allá, I guess the word refers to the experience of being bicultural or bilingual who doesn't fully belong to either their heritage culture or the culture they of their adopted home. This feeling of being in between can stem from various factors, including immigration, family history, and cultural identity. So I think it's important for me to express my opinion and my feelings about the specific topic because I think it's a topic that has affected pretty much my entire life. And it does have to do with this cultural or this I'm sorry, this I'm gonna say cultural identity that it kind of did something to me. It helped me become into the person that I am today, but also it was like a struggle throughout my life because it was a very obvious disconnection. No sabía por qué estaba pasando, no, y se me hace que no había gente que me lo pudiera explicar. No, I don't think que había like any people, like for example in my family. I don't believe that my mom and my dad knew exactly what was happening to them because I think they were going through a similar assimilation process that was probably even harder for them because they were older. And so I remember growing up and just kind of feeling like, well, I mean, what do you mean? Like I wasn't born here. I don't understand. Where was I born? And then when I would hear things like, oh, you were born in Chihuahua, Mexico, and I was just like, yeah, but I don't even know where that place is. Like it was so difficult for me to wrap my head around the fact that I was born in a different place than where I was currently living in. And I think I probably made that realization probably when I was in elementary school. I'm gonna say about, I don't know, I must have been about 8 years old because what I believed to be true, like all of a sudden wasn't. I just assumed, well, I was born in a hospital just like all the kids, in like around me, like a mom gets pregnant and then she goes to the hospital, she has a baby, and I thought that's what happened to me. I didn't know, I didn't have any concept of, the struggle, that I didn't understand it. I was obviously too young for that. So when something kind of like started clicking was, I think, when somebody at school said, Yeah, when I was born in they were talking about the hospitals that they were born in, and he said, "Oh, my little brother was born." I think he said something like the little kid was like, "My little brother was born at I just had a little brother that was born, and he was born in the same hospital that I was born at." And I was just like, "Oh, like what hospital were you born at?" And he's trying to obviously we're 8 years old, so he's trying to explain what hospital he was born at, and it was in in the vicinity in Santana, and I was just like, I remember thinking like, well, where was I? I think I was born in the same hospital because I remember even thinking like, even maybe even saying it out loud. Oh, I think I was born in that same hospital. Because I think it just kind of made the connection. Like, if you were born in the in that hospital and you live around here, then we probably, I was probably born there too. It's kind of interesting, and so I remember coming home and asking about it, and then being told that I was born in Mexico. And that was so confusing for me. It was so confusing for me. I was just like I feel like Mexico became like this foreign, like it was like a foreign, well, obviously it was a foreign country, but it was a like this magic, like a magic place that a lot of us like just kind of came from. I don't know. I just kind of imagined this thing completely different in my head than how it was actually, than how it really happened. So I think that was like the beginning of a lot of uncertainty for me, and I had like so many questions, and um and and I just feel like nobody was able to answer those questions for me, and that just kind of did something to me. I think it didn't allow me to form the the kind of identity that I should have, to have um just kind of like a stronger sense of belonging. And because I didn't have that in early life, like I struggled with it throughout my life. I am the uh, I am the second of five children, so I know that that I was as I was growing up, and because I am like the light one, it's five of us, and I'm the lightest one, and then my younger brother is also the lightest one, and then everybody. My other siblings are kind of like different shades of a little bit of darker, but for the most part, I've always been the lightest one, and that in itself was already like confusing for me. It created this kind of confusion because I didn't look like my siblings, and I didn't look like my parents. And I think all the questions of like, why are you lighter and how come they're darker? It was questions that obviously I couldn't answer because I was just a kid. Um but it also, I think it just kind of formed, it did something to me. It just kind of formed this kind of like confusion within me of like, I'm different. I'm just different. I don't like, wait a minute, I'm not even, I don't belong in this family. I don't belong. So now I hear that I wasn't born in this country. I'm from this other place that I have no idea about. And then because I've always had this like very curious mind, I feel like it just kind of did something to me. It just kind of did something to me that um that that kind of carried through the rest of my life. And so with everything that's happening now, and the way people are just kind of their perception of I don't know, I'm going to say nationalism. I'm not even sure. But this wanting of belonging, because I think al último se me hace que that's what happens to us. It's just like, I just wanted to belong. I just wanted to know that I belong somewhere. And because I was living in this country and I was going to school, and I was, around my friends, and all these things were happening, I just wanted to belong. I just wanted to like not to have to explain. I just wanted to say I was born at, yeah, the hospital, over there where you were born. And my mom and my dad were born, there too, and whatever. But I think yeah, I think that actually did something to me. It did something to me um, that took a long time, like many, many things had to happen in my life, that many experiences had to happen in my life to kind of um, gradually, kind of like bring me back to my roots. And so that's been really interesting for me. So I wanted to explore that because cuando nos juntamos, and I know that this happens a lot because I've had experiences of this, and I think cuando nos juntamos, we do this thing, right? We're amongst our peers, and we're amongst our, people that look like us, that speak like us, that have very similar views and opinion like us, and we feel at home. And we have Mexican Americans. It's very indicative that we speak Spanglish. It has become part of our identity also. And that part, I'm going to get into it a little bit, a little bit for a little later on this conversation, because I think that's that's a whole topic in itself. And so I in order for me to like kind of understand, like I kind of have to like step outside of the box and kind of be able to kind of put the pieces together. And I think putting the pieces together comes in like in these waves of experiences, just these experiences that come up where I realize that this is the way we communicate. This is the way we relate to each other. This is the way we do this thing in the United States when we come from a Mexican culture. And as we get older, and as I have gotten older, it's become very, very important for me to go back to my roots. It's just become really, really important for me to kind of like close or culture, and where I fit into all of this. And so I remember like one of the moments that I specifically remember that always stays like very fresh in my mind is when I think I must have been about 10 at this point. And this was during the time where I was old enough to speak English, and then I was already writing and I was already reading. And so this was usually around the time when our parents, needed us. They needed us to translate, and they needed us to fill out documents, and they needed us to do all these things. So for some reason, I was always like the one that was chosen. I was the one that was picked for doing this, and I just became good at it. I became good at it because I did it so many times, and I lost that fear of translating, and I did my very best. I didn't always get it, but I did my very best, and I think a lot of us can relate to that, to those moments where it was like, dang, I don't want to do this. I don't feel like like talking to somebody on the phone and scheduling appointments. And when you're young and you don't understand that part, it's just like frustrating, and it's like, why don't they speak English? Why don't they just learn how to speak English? And I know it must have been probably hard for my parents just to ask that, because um like, I don't know, like, I'm pretty sure it was hard for them not to feel that they could be self-sufficient, and having to rely on their children. So now I understand that part of it. I've grown very sensitive to it, and so I understand it. But when I was a little kid, I didn't understand that. I didn't care about wanting to do any of those things. I just want to be a kid. I just wanted to be with my friends and play and speak the way I spoke, and hablar mucho, and and speak in the way that was just most comfortable to me, which has always been Spanglish. I remember though that because of that experience of having to be put in those situations of translating, sí me acuerdo que I would do this thing, and I probably started doing this as young as 10, where I would look at myself in the mirror, and I would practice without having an accent, because somebody told me that I had an accent, and I was a little kid, and I didn't even understand what that meant. It just and an older person said, "Oh, I know your parents are Mexican, or I know they're Spanish, or something like that, because you have an accent." I didn't know what the fuck that meant. And so what I registered was that I sounded different, that something in the way I spoke sounded different. So what I started doing is I would look at myself in the mirror, and I would practice. I would practice um like by imitating, like characters on TV, like the Brady Bunch. I would practice like I don't know, like the Valley Girls, and I would just practice. I would practice and practice, and sometimes I would be in the bathroom like for an hour, and I did this, and I remember practicing these facial features, and I remember like it was so funny now that I think about it. But I did this not knowing that I was doing it because I wanted to I didn't want people to perceive me that way. I just wanted to belong. I just wanted to fit in. I didn't want to be called like, oh, the kid that has an accent, or the kid that speaks funny or whatever. I just wanted to fit in. And so I remember really early in life, I kind of made this decision that I didn't really want to speak Spanish that much anymore. And then when I would get home and my mom would and my parents would ask me questions, I would always answer, in English. And so for a while we kind of had this communication where they would speak to me in Spanish, and I would respond or reply in English. And we did that. And I think after that, like my siblings also started doing that. And we grew up in a home just like that, where we spoke English amongst ourselves. We understood what our parents would tell us, and then depending on what age we were, sometimes we would speak more Spanish, and sometimes we just didn't. And so it kind of started forming this dynamic of my parents also having to learn like how to understand English, which in the long run it ended up helping them. But I'm also I also look at it in a different way, where I look at it with a lot of gratitude, because I'm grateful that they didn't learn how to speak English. And I know it sounds a little weird, but my parents till this day are fluent in Spanish. And even though they are able to communicate, I know that they've done it because they've been living in this country for what has it been, for almost 50 years. And they've had a bunch of jobs where they've had to, communicate at least minimally. And I know that they are able to, but at home they just want to be themselves, and they don't want to practice, and they just, they choose because they can, because they shouldn't have to if they don't want to. And so we kind of did that. And I think of like in the beginning when I was a kid, I remember I didn't necessarily appreciate it. I didn't understand it. I didn't value it. But now it's like, oh my gosh, I'm like so grateful. I'm so grateful because my Spanish I consider my Spanish pretty good. You know, I can have conversations in Spanish, pretty lengthy conversations, and I also work on my my pronunciation of the words, and I try to learn about words so that I can have a fluent conversation with somebody in Spanish, and not kind of have to code switch, because I think that's kind of like what we've all done, right? We just kind of code switch. We bounce from one language to the other when it's necessary. And so I think that part of my parents choosing to do that is kind of what would help me stay fluent. It is. I Because there was other families within our community that my parents were friends with, that decided to do it the other way. They decided that because they were living in the United States, that their children didn't need to speak Spanish anymore. So they almost like forbid them to speak Spanish. And so as they grew up, obviously they were in school with their friends, and they refused. And then later, when their parents wanted them to speak, they couldn't anymore. They forgot. It wasn't something that was practiced, continuously. So se les olvidó. And now they're just, as I've mentioned before, this, being bilingual is also means money. It means better financial opportunities, better opportunities to tap into the Spanish speaking market. And I think that's amazing. But obviously, when we were growing up and being raised by immigrant parents, I think that in retrospect, I can understand how assimilation was really important for them because they didn't want their kids to suffer. They didn't want to suffer because I think their level of suffering was already like kind of, pretty high. I mean, they left their country, they left everything, and now, you know, um, they're trying to raise their children in a completely different country. And so that's like fascinating to me. Like I think it's like amazing. And for a lot of us, it took us into different, into different areas. We ventured into different areas. And for a lot of us, I think it didn't necessarily impact us in completely negative ways, but I think it did do something to us. And these are kind of like the experiences that I like to speak about because I believe this is indicative of the Gen X uh, when we pretty much ended up raising our kids very similar to the way we were raised. Within, the Gen X generation being raised by boomer immigrant parents. And like I see it now. It's become very obvious, and I've become very aware that, the impact that that had on me at that moment and then what happened afterwards, me becoming an adult and then raising my own family. And so it's completely understandable, and I've kind of learned to have this empathy, for myself and not be so hard on myself because it was this kind of this part of our evolutionary process, being immigrants uh, that kind of distorted what was, and for me it did cause a lot of like identity problems, because I didn't look, the same, um because I really immersed myself into like everything that had to do with like American culture. Like I mentioned before, I was the kid that was like really into pop culture, and I loved, everything that had to do with pop culture. I grew up watching the Brady Bunch, and I grew up watching PBS. I grew up watching Mr. Rogers, and I grew up watching, all the American shows that kids watched, cartoons on Saturday morning, and then talking about it, when we get back to school. It was it was really interesting. And when I think about it now, I'm like, yeah, it was part of me growing up because I was living in the United States. And so the influence that I had, with everything that had to do with my culture came primarily from my parents. So, them putting on El Chavo del Ocho and then putting on, burbujas, or watching las películas todas las películas de los Almadas. I don't know if you guys remember that. But every time we were gonna watch a movie, it was like in Spanish, it was always gonna be like de los Almadas, de los Mario Almadas, oh my gosh, I remember I watched so many of those películas. And also the older películas, the ones that had to do with like I don't know, like como La Rosa de Guadalupe, like back then, La Silla Vacía con esta Yolanda del Rio and stuff like that. I learned so much about what it is, to be Mexican from watching all these movies. And then I learned, and then I like, there was this artista que se llamaba Irene Rivas. And my mom used to play her. My mom, I used to play her music a lot. I I think she was like really big, like in the 70s and early 80s. And because her name was Irene, like I was like, oh, she's got a nice name. So I started listening a lot more to her, and her music is beautiful. I mean, if you guys want to look her up, she's got some beautiful music. And I learned how to sing like her, and I wanted to mimic her. And then that's when I realized that I really love Spanish music. Que todo lo que tiene que ver con la música, mexicana. I love it, and I love to sing it, and I love how it sounds, and I love like every part of it. And I learned that, through my parents. And so for that, I'm very grateful. But again, it's, as I went through, as I continued throughout time, there was a lot of confusion. I grew up like so confused. I didn't understand. Like I didn't understand what Mexico was until I went to Mexico for the first time when I was 12 years old. And I remember going to this place that just looked really poor. It was like it wasn't a rancho, but it was a little pueblito, and my grandma lived there, and the rest of my mom's family lived there, and they were fairly poor. I don't remember, everybody having a car, and I remember the people that had cars were like, little like, you would pack them, and that's kind of how I know that, and that's why I also made the comparison. Like we do the same stuff over here, and nos subíamos in back of the pickups, and we just kind of like rode into the, they took us into the city. They, oh my gosh, that was so dangerous. Anyways, and so that was my very first experience of Mexico. And when I went to this part of Mexico, when I went to Chihuahua and into the pueblo, I thought this was all Mexico. I didn't, I couldn't like put it together yet. This is what Mexico looked like. And it looked kind of scary because I'm like, you know, kids were poor, and I could see, I knew that we were poor here in the United States because we didn't have a lot of the things that a lot of my white my white friends had. I didn't have any of those things, but when I first visited Mexico, I realized that there was a lot of kids that had so much less than me. And so I right away, like, I started putting it together, and I'm like, they're poor. Mexico's poor. I don't want to go to Mexico. Como los tigres del norte. I don't want to go back to Mexico, because I started comparing it, and it didn't look the same way. And kids didn't speak the way I spoke, and they didn't understand me. And they would say stuff like, "Ay, estas se creen gringas, o son gringas, or las gringas," and then the comparison was being made that like I was a gringa, or we were gringas now because we didn't talk the same. And yeah, that was interesting to me. I'm like, well, if I was born in this country and I don't like this country, and I don't fit into this country, then then means that my country is the United States. And so I just kind of made this decision in my head that was like my country, and that's just where I wanted to live, and all that. And Mexico is just kind of like a place where we would go visit my grandma, and that was pretty much it. And then we would get to come back home. So I think within all that, at a very young age, I started I began to understand that when people, it was scary. It was scary because people were doing all they could to come to this country so they could have this better life that everybody imagined that they would have. And and it became scary because then things would cross my mind like, are they gonna send us back to Mexico? Like, could we get deported? I didn't understand the whole immigration process, and I didn't know. And I think by the time I was 12, we had already gained legal like a legal residency. So that wasn't necessarily a fear anymore, but it was something like that I noticed. Could that happen to me because I wasn't born here? Now I realize that I was born in this other country, and that kind of did something in me. Like, I think it created this kind of like fear in me that I wasn't necessarily an unconscious type of fear, I think. And so I always would say, like, I would never go back to Mexico. Oh my gosh, I would never live in Mexico. Mexico's scary, and people are poor, and what would I do? I wouldn't have any friends, and anyways, all these things that are now pretty silly. So I think with this notion of ni de aquí ni de allá, I think it's become really important for us to understand as Mexican Americans that we've all gone through some sort of process when it comes to feeling this way, and it's affected us all in different ways. And I think not feeling like you belong also does damaging things to us in ways that we don't also understand. It does a lot of psychological like damage because it's important for us to feel safe where we're at, and to feel that this is our home, and there nobody's going to come and take us and separate us or anything like that. And I think, especially right now, I think there's a lot of children that are going through like these feelings, and and I think that it's beginning to get really hard for, parents to try to explain to children why they have to go to back to a place where, they don't know. And ooh, that in itself is, it's going to carry some lasting psychological effects that we won't know until later, when all the data comes out, when we realize that there's been the amount of people that have been deported, and the amount of children that have been deported, and kind of like, um taken from this place where they had already began the assimilation process, and then having to go back to Mexico and start this process. um a similar process is going to have some lasting effects. Being Mexican American is probably one of the most difficult things that we can do as an ethnic group, because that the challenges of being Mexican and being raised and living in the United States did something to us. It created us into like this kind of like a subculture. It forced us to go into this subculture for protection, I believe. And this subculture, at some point became like um, the division amongst people in our own ethnic group. And so I'm always, because I have this curious mind. I'm always trying to kind of look at it in a very psychological way, and try to understand, like, how, like, what happened. That's why I think what happened and who we became is important to me, because I think it tells a story. Like, I can tell my story now based on all the experiences that I had, with that part of it. And so yeah, it's about explaining and expressing that I have these feelings, was always scary for me. I think I was ashamed. I think it embarrassed me that I couldn't, like, I didn't feel the way, I said that I did. I wasn't feeling. I Everybody was claiming, their Mexicanismo, and how they were so proud of being Mexican, and I was just like, well, of course I'm proud, because my parents, have instilled that in me, but I didn't feel that inside of me. And I felt bad, because I'm like, why don't I feel like that? Am I coming across like I think that I'm better than everybody? And then I just, now, obviously, at this stage in life, I realized that it was just like a protection mechanism. I didn't know what was going on, and it was scary for me. Like, it was scary, and I just gravitated towards a group of people that accepted me. And then I became really good at just fitting into different types of groups. I did really good in fitting into with the white culture, and I've had very, um, a lot of people that have had tremendous impacts in my life, that have shaped my life into becoming, this version of me now. And they're white people. My mentor is a white man, and he is probably the person that I have looked up to, the most, through my Mexican experience. I'm sorry, American experience. And to this day, he is a very important, person in my life, and somebody that I look up to, and somebody that I will consult with if I have a question, or if I'm confused about something. And that's who he is for me. And also, I've had very good relationships, amazing deep relationships with some amazing people that are also white. And I love them, because they're amazing people. And I didn't think about it. I didn't see them as white or Mexican or anything. I just saw them as people. And and so I think when we can kind of like understand that part, then I think we can start to become more inclusive and not kind of like get so stuck on this part that yes, it is very important. It's very important for me to express my culture. It's very important for me to vocalize, you know, who I am and what I believe in. It's very, very important for me, you know, but that shouldn't come with me putting any other ethnic group down. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think I don't see the point of it. um I don't see the benefits of it, and so I just choose not to. And I choose to, you know, to see people for, you know, for who they are. And so work so hard to be accepted, but at the end we know that but they're not going to really accept us. You know, we're accepted based on what we can provide. You know, we're very hardworking people also, and that comes from our Mexican, you know, from our Mexican culture, that we're very dedicated. We're very hardworking people. We are ambitious people. We are people that, you know, very proud people. And I think they see those qualities in us, and unfortunately a lot of that is exploited also. And I think we also can see that when we go to visit Mexico, different parts of Mexico. um yes, we are welcomed, and our families love us, and they love for us to visit, but we know that we don't necessarily fit in. You know, there is also something that is dividing us. And so and I think that that in itself is what we teach our children. You know, we're teaching them, because I know that I learned that, you know, from my parents, that kind of like insecurity. They were insecure. They were not sure how they should be raising us, because they themselves, you know, didn't know. You know, they were trying to figure it out. And so in that, I think within that process, somehow our identities became distorted. For me, at least, that's, you know, that's what happened. It was this it was this part of me that was constantly like fighting. I was always like, I feel like I was always fighting. Like I was always fighting myself. I was always fighting, I don't know. I think I was fighting that part of me. That part of me that felt like not n- not where I was supposed to be. I think that's happening, you know, in this country. This is a time where I feel it the most, obviously, for obvious reasons. Um, and I think for me, it's become important that that I get a grip and a handle of that fear, because I have nothing to fear. Like the fear is just what, you know, what I created in my mind. Because when I think about it, and the way I analyze it at this point is, I can go anywhere. I don't. The United States isn't the only place that I can live. I can live and anywhere I want. And that doesn't include Mexico either. I could choose a different country just because I can, because we have the ability to do so, because we have the liberty to do it right now, at least. And and so when I think about it, I don't feel as restrained, or I don't feel um like I need to be here because this is my country, because I'm patriotic, and because no, I don't feel like that. I just feel like I need to go to the place that gives me the most amount of peace. The most amount of peace. Now I've become bilingual. I can switch, you know, between two languages very easily, and as easily as I do that, I can learn another language. So I'm not afraid that that part of it is no longer, you know, that thing that has always kept me afraid. I don't fear it that way. But I know that if I used to feel like that, I believe there's people that are still kind of there, you know, in that place where what happens if, you know, what happens if we get deported? What happens if I have to go back to Mexico because things are just getting like, you know, out of hand in this country, and it's robbing me from my peace? And am I going to be well? You know, am I going to survive? Am I going to make it? And I think if we all kind of switch that mentality to know that as long as we're okay inside, as long as we have this balance within ourselves, we're going to be okay anywhere, wherever we go. If our parents were able to immigrate without many of them, without knowing anybody, they just kind of came, and then they met people and they made friends, and maybe they had one friend that invited them, and then after that, they started, figuring it out and working around it. If they could do it, why can't we do it? We have so much more skills. We're so much more prepared. We've got we're so further ahead than our parents ever were. And they did it, and they thrived, and we're here as proof of that. So I think about it that way. If they did it, I can do it. Why can't I do it? What is keeping me, from reaching the highest levels of happiness? What is keeping me? Because I think in the end, when we figure that out, we figure out that it's all the ideas that have come from the way we were raised, um, by being raised by people that left their country, that left their culture to assimilate into a completely different culture, and trying to raise children in the process of it. And just looking at it from an outside perspective, that must have been really, really difficult. And I don't have any of those challenges. So then why would I fear? What's the fear? And I think for me, at least, what I come up with has to do with this fear that was created by us observing our parents being afraid, by me observing my parents not believing in themselves, and not wanting more because they were afraid, because they were afraid to ask. They were afraid that they didn't deserve it. They were afraid. And I feel a lot of it had to do, it was fear-based. Even after they became legal, even after all that, it was like the fear in los trabajos. I remember it was always like the jobs, that they were afraid to ask for a raise. And when somebody took note of them and they gave them a raise, it was like it was like, wonderful. It was like the best thing in the world, because now they were being recognized. That didn't happen very often. And most of the time, they were just exploited because they were afraid to speak up, So I witnessed that growing up. I witnessed, my parents being exploited, and pretty much all the jobs, that they went to, and my dad coming home with so much anger, and it was like this unchanneled anger, that we got to see, that his children got to see, and that affected us also. That did something to us as well. And it was that the energy of that anger that stayed in me for such a long time. So in order for me to be able to kind of get past that, I have to understand that that was not me. That was not my experience. That has not been my life. My life has been completely different. I am very grateful, and in every possible way, because the experience that I've had because of my parents has been amazing. And the challenges, yeah, of course we've had challenges. I don't think any immigrant family doesn't have challenges, but they did such a good job in trying to buffer so much of that. And I'm so grateful for them, and I give them so much credit, and um I want them to live a good life, and I want them to be happy because of it, because I think they deserve it, because I think having to live with that kind of stress for so many years also did something to them. And understanding them, and trying to help them as much as I can in this stage of their life is actually an honor and a privilege for me. So I feel very grateful for that as well. So, anyways, I think I'm gonna. I just thought it was kind of interesting. I wanted to bring up this topic of ni de aquí ni de allá, because I I would like for people that are listening to me, my the three people that listen to me, hopefully there'll be more, that they can start, like, where we're at as far as Mexican American people in this country now, and our contributions. What are we doing? What are we doing as far as helping our people get to the places that you know we have been able to reach, to like cómo los podemos ayudar, qué podemos hacer, because I think at the end of the day, I feel like such a big responsibility to be able to do that for other people, and to get into um these areas where I can offer services to our people without having to take advantage of them, without exploiting them, without ripping them off, without committing fraud, without doing all these things. I want to be able to do something for our people, because throughout my life there was a lot of people that helped my parents, that helped our family, that were good people, that didn't take advantage of them. And we also had a lot of people that did take advantage of them, but I want to focus on doing that, something good. What can I do? How can I like plant that seed, and where can I plant it? And so that part has become very important for me, because I think that if we can all kind of grasp that concept, of why we feel the way we feel, and why we have these feelings of not necessarily belonging, to in the United States or in Mexico. We have to figure out, that we have to find our balance. We have to find balance in our place. We have to find it. We're gonna have to do some soul searching, and some pretty uh, deep digging to figure out where I belong in this, because I think within the two cultures, I explain it as this line in the middle. We are Mexican and we are American, because we live in this country and we're living the culture. But we hold on to our roots, and we work really hard to preserve them. And so we have created this culture in the middle, that's right in the middle, which is us. We are that. We are the middle. And so in trying to analyze that we are in the middle, like what does that mean, and how, what am I responsible for? How do I contribute? How do I explain to people that being in the middle doesn't mean good or bad. It just means that we're in this place because our experiences and all these lessons have put us in this part now. And instead of hating it, and instead of fighting, and instead of doing, can we just embrace it, and can we just look at it, and can we just like dissect it, so we can take all the good parts and start applying them where they need to be applied. And so I think for me, that's where I choose to start. You know, um, one of my biggest areas to start with, obviously, and y lo digo una y mil veces, and I'm never going to stop saying it, is education. It's education. Just like learn. And I'm not saying go get a formal education. I don't advocate for that, because everybody has different journeys, and everybody has different beliefs, and everybody is on their own path. I don't say that, but I do say, like, educate yourself. Educate yourself. Know what's going on. Find reliable sources. Feed yourself, feed your mind with important information that is going to help you make a difference in your own life and in the lives of the people around you. Like, education is power. And so if we understood that part of it, then we can start making like really big changes within our community and within our own people, because now we understand, like, now we have this concept. Now we're no longer in victim mode. Now we are the people that can start making changes. Now we are the people that understand the American culture, because we've lived here long enough, and we also understand the part of our Mexican culture. We're so rich. This is like, I think being Mexican American is probably one of the best things that could happen, to a human being, because you're exposed to so much, and that, I believe, that creates these neurological changes in your brain, because you're having to code switch and go from one to another very easily. We don't think about it. It happens automatically. We have programmed ourselves to live this way and for our brains to work this way so that we can live in this country. And even though it could be very stressful, it has been stressful. It will continue to be stressful for a lot of people. We have to start taking the good, also taking the good and applying them in the places that need to be applied. And the things que no nos sirven, just let them go. Si no te sirve, pues déjalo. You know, the parts de our culture que no nos sirven, let them go. The parts of the American culture que crees que no te sirve, let it go, you know, and you walk that path. You walk that path with conviction, and you know that you've already taken from both sides, and it's created you into the person that you are now. And you're not gonna look like anybody, and you're not gonna sound like anybody. You know, you're gonna relate to a lot more people, but everybody's gonna is gonna have different perceptions. Be okay with it. Just be okay with it. Be proud and walk and walk and walk it, because while you're walking, everybody's watching you. Everybody's observing how you're walking, and we don't know where those impacts are being made. And that becomes important. That becomes our responsibility as Mexican Americans to continue to teach. We become teachers now. Our generation X has become the generation where we are teaching. We got to teach our children how to be confident, how to not be afraid, how to navigate both worlds, and do it with a lot of grace and dignity, so that they can go on and teach the next generation. And this is all about the future generations. Whatever we didn't learn, whatever, our parents couldn't give us, whatever, that part of it is gone. Now, what are we, and who have we become, and how do we improve? And I think that's the key. That's the key to making the changes that we need to make within our culture. So I encourage everybody. I encourage you guys to come on, and I'm never going to stop saying it. I have an open invitation. Come on to my show. Come on my show. And let's have a discussion. Tell me why you feel the way you feel. Tell me what it is about being Mexican American that you're proud of, or tell me what it is about being Mexican American that you're not proud of, and why you're not proud of it. And let's start having these discussions. Let's open up these dialogues. And in some way or another, we're going to start healing a lot of these traumas that we have that have this, the foundation that comes, from, this fear-based foundation. And so that makes me really excited. And I'm really grateful that I recorded this episode today, because I kind of got stuck for a little bit with trying to come on and explain. I wanted to come on and explain like different points, like my point of view, but then I started feeling like I was getting kind of angry, and then I had to kind of I had to do some soul searching and figure out where that anger and that aggressiveness was coming from, because I'm not about coming or creating a platform so that I can spread divisiveness or spew hate or anything like that. That's not who I am. That's not what I'm about. I am a Mexican American. I am a Chicana woman that is interested in educating people that are interested in knowing about our struggle as Mexican Americans. I am an educated Chicana woman that is interested in building stronger communities that are going to help and allow our people to flourish and to thrive and to stop being afraid. And I am a Mexican American woman that wants to see change, for our people. I am a Mexican American woman that is very Mexican, y yo soy la primera que, que digo que viva Mexico. I love Mexico, but this is where I set my roots. My roots también vienen de aquí. And this is where, my children were born. And I love this country, even though it's disappointed me and it's broken my heart very many times. I believe that it is a great nation because our people made it a great nation, because our hard work and our sacrifice and our tears and everything that they took from us made it a great nation. So that is what I choose, that's the kind of message that I choose to deliver. A message of strength, and a message of hope, and a message to stop, hating each other. Like, we're brothers and sisters, somos mechicas. We are warriors. We come from some of the strongest warriors, some of the fiercest warriors, where we come from and why our people were so resilient, and the connection that we have, to our indigenous, people, to our indigenous roots. I want you guys to learn that because it's amazing, because it's beautiful. We fight with our words, and we fight with our courage, and we fight, and now we have tools to fight with, and so thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your lives, guys. I hope that I inspired, one of my 3 listeners. And I encourage everybody, to go out and do some of those things that you are able to do, because you have the tools to do them. And I encourage you guys to make the changes happen, and the way we make them happen is by, first, it starts with us. Like, it starts with you. It starts with me. It kind of has this way of just, trickling into everything else, everybody else in your life. So vamos a hacer cosas buenas, vamos a motivar, vamos a enseñar, sean maestros, encourage young people, to get an education, encourage people, motivate people. Ya es tiempo de dejarnos de tanta envidia entre nosotros, de echarnos tierra, de querernos pisotear. Like, todos somos iguales. If you are Mexican American, todos somos iguales. Entonces, stop putting your brother down porque está más morenito. Stop putting people down that don't look like you, that don't own the things that you own. Stop doing that. That is causing division amongst our people. Vamos a ayudarnos. ¿Qué vamos a hacer? ¿Qué vamos a hacer para ayudarnos, para poder levantarnos, para poder ayudarnos a progresar? ¿Qué vamos a hacer? Like, think about it and start making some of those changes, little changes, because everything starts with, with an idea, with the smallest of changes, with not talking about bad about people, specifically our own people. And que nos dividimos because we call, oh no, ese es paisa, oh no, ese es border, oh no, es que ese es from this neighborhood, oh no, es que ese es sureño, ese es norteño. Like, we're all the fucking same. Todos somos iguales. So I think it's time for us to start acting like it. So anyways, with that said, I'll let you guys go. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your lives to listen to me. I encourage all of you guys to express yourselves and express your views and opinions in a way that that is not aggressive, in a way that other people can understand you. I encourage it. I am so proud of our people. I'm so proud of us. We have come such a long way, and we could go even further. So till next time, guys, stay positive. Be kind to everybody, specifically to our people. We need to be united at this moment. Hay que dejarnos de tanta envidia, hay que dejarnos de tantos chismes, hay que dejarnos de tanto odio, hay que dejar eso. Todos somos iguales. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys next time. This is your host, Irene, and this is Chulas Peremulas.